advancing. So for people already in this space, I guess that's the next piece. So you're in sustainability and uh, looking to progress on to within your career. And I guess we spend a lot of time in this space, and people will contact us and looking at how they are going to look to that next step. And um, I guess a big piece of that is that long-term career planning, and how do people set themselves up for success? And we spend a lot of time in our jobs, like day in, day out. So um, it's interesting that people don't actually plan out where they want to go. Often they're not thinking about their next role until they get a call from someone like us, uh, putting a new role in front of their face, and they look at it and they might go, okay, that looks interesting. And so they explore it. So actually taking the time to work out where you want to go, what you want to do, what actually excites you, what lights you up as well. So it's great that you can try and progress up the ladder, but managing people might not be something that you enjoy. So, do you really want to head into that space? So I think it is important for people to take the time to think about where they want to progress to.
I think also why, we manage a lot of conversations with people who are, they've got a really particular timeline to actually, let's say, move to a head of sustainability or a head of ESG, and it's sort of understanding, well, what does that actually look like in terms of the change you want to make and the levers that you want to pull. And I also use this anecdote, and I actually did do my student's pilot's license a long, long time ago, but there is nothing that can actually replace the real experience of flying a plane. You can use a simulator all you like, but it's not until you're actually in that plane on your own during your first solo trip that you recognize all those other skills that you need. And I think it's the same when we talk to people who are really, really hungry just to keep progressing on a particular timeline. There's real merit in actually staying put, hovering, really exploring the role in its true capacity and exploring all of the different scenarios and testing that knowledge before you go to the next level.
I still think it's terrifying that you had your pilot's license before you had driver's license, but
You've got to start somewhere, Richard.
yeah, I'd rather start on the ground. So there's a question here around what professional development or study do I need to secure a more senior role? So what are you seeing?
What are we seeing there? So again, I think it really does depend on the sector that you're in. So if you look at someone who's sitting in an ASX listed organisation where you've got the complexity of shareholders and investors, and a complicated board structure, then the ask of you as a professional is going to be much more than it is working in a smaller organisation. So I think really being pragmatic around what is the ask of you as a professional in the organisation, and what subject matter do you need to bring to the role and to the organisation to be really credible and really lead that next level of innovation. As Richard mentioned before, we are yet to really see a deliberate ask on a position description around having, a master's in sustainability. Certainly, the ask around, professional experience that relates to sustainability. But I think, again, the space moves really, really quickly. So I would really focus on your mentoring and your networking and understanding the materiality of sustainability in other organisations that are more advanced than your own and how they're tackling that, and really focusing more on the soft skills. It's around, are you the most effective communicator, influencer? What's your storytelling like? Because at the end of the day, if you can't convince change in the boardroom, you may still struggle in other forums as well.
Yeah. And there's a question around we're seeing a lot of talk about the chief sustainability officer. How do I become one? It's a really interesting question because there's a number of chief sustainability officers in Australia. Many of them are not sustainability practitioners, so they're executives first and foremost. So they've got an interest in sustainability, so they might have come from a corporate affairs background or a risk or strategy. So they're being put into the position, and when I talk about these CSOs, I mean they're on the executive, so they're a direct report to the CEO. So they're being put in because they understand the business.
Absolutely.
And they're there as an executive first and foremost, and then they hire in the capability underneath that with extremely capable, competent individuals. the gap that we're seeing between people transitioning from a head of sustainability into a chief sustainability officer is that broader commercial experience. And I'm a firm believer in trying to gain experience across an organisation. Like if you can develop internally where you are, if there are opportunities for secondments. Claire, you and I met with the CEO of a water company recently, and he was putting in place that all the executives were actually doing rotations. So a CFO was doing a CIO role, and so and the reason for that was that he was giving them the opportunity to work across the organisation, because that would then give them the opportunity to step up into that CEO role. So think about the skills and experience that you're going to need to step up into that executive level role, because sustainability, ESG is not going to be enough on its own to land you that role unless you can build those broader skills and experience.
And it sort of talks to, that market update that we gave earlier in terms of that transition from that very audit compliance focus to now being deeply embedded in strategy. Shareholders are watching, investors are asking, customers are also asking. So if you are stepping into that CSO role, that change maker capability within you and that influencer and being able to tell the story still backed up with the credibility of the subject area of sustainability is going to be increasingly important.
Yeah, and we are seeing that you can transition across different roles, different sectors, different organisations. It used to be a lot more siloed in the past, but there is definitely more opportunity for people to progress and advance up the chain in this space. We're not yet seeing board appointments that are ESG focused. That will come. There will be a turnover in terms of board roles and appointments as this becomes more and more core to business sustainability.
And we're certainly starting to see that in the not-for-profit sector, where climate change is a real impact to their overall business model. So that's an exciting change.
Yeah. Been asked what the jobs are going to be over the next 24 months, and it's very hard without a crystal ball, but certainly we can see the trends that are emerging. So we mentioned earlier around mandatory disclosure and reporting, so that next tier of organisations. So it's going to continue to be a focus for certainly in the next 12, 18 months. Nature and biodiversity is emerging. There's only a handful of companies that have actually invested in internal capability, and certainly some of the banks are looking at how they fund some of these initiatives and develop products. But with TNFD, or the Task Force on Nature-related Financial Disclosures, coming in, then that will sharpen the attention as well. We're seeing more social impact, human rights roles starting to come back on the radar again. When the Modern Slavery Act came in a few years ago, there was a surge in these roles, and certainly looking at sustainable procurement and sustainable supply chain roles. So there's a slow burn coming through with that. My fear is that there will be another incident, and it will take that for organisations to sharpen their attention and go, well, how did this happen? So, and then circularity is still emerging, but as I say, there are initiatives that are coming through, but certainly it is very easy for us with a lot of land to throw our waste away, but greater legislation. There's organisations like APCO that are doing a great role around product stewardship and organisations taking ownership for the waste that they're producing. So it's not going to be quiet, put it that way.
No, and I think there's some indicators there, and it might be worthy sharing. I think, there are organisations that wait for legislation and policy, and then there are the early adopters that pioneer and go ahead and wait for legislation and policy to catch up. So I think we are certainly starting to see an intersection of some really interesting roles where organisations have invested in their own research to understand that's going to be a material risk to them in the future. So we're seeing some blended roles around cybersecurity and climate change, for example, and greater emphasis on nature and biodiversity that's being built into future areas.
Yeah, great. And this question just links to I guess the growth, but almost the flip side of that. So, what observations have you made in terms of layoffs and the reduction in job opportunities and sustainability, given the current economic climate? It would be very dangerous to say that we're immune and very foolish, but we're not seeing a big downturn. So yes, there have been some redundancies from large international firms at the senior level, but only at the senior level. But we're certainly not seeing the impact that we're seeing across other sectors. I always reference back to the global financial crisis. If you had sustainability in your title, you were in trouble.
Yes.
People were trying to put risk or move into health and safety roles, or a lot of talk from sustainability leaders trying to hide their people in the organisation in different roles. We didn't see that through COVID. There some sectors that were impacted quite strongly. Staff were furloughed, but they weren't made redundant. So certainly that it is very strong in this sector. There is still high demand. I guess where we are seeing some challenges is around specific skill sets being required. So that may be where there's a shift. So if there is a role that is no longer available, it is probably because they need a different skill set. So it will be replaced by something with a slightly different skill set, but certainly not seeing that downturn.
I think in addition to that, I think organisations are getting far more discerning around the level of candidate that they bring in. So it's if you do land in a role currently in sustainability, there's an expectation that you can very quickly demonstrate value. You can understand the competing commercial and operational priorities and position sustainability in the right way to sort of get that buy-in across the organisation.